Seni punya nyawa. Seni punya kuasa. Seni mencetuskan perasaan yang tiada taranya. Seni merupakan pemacu negara. Seni menyatukan kita dalam meraikan dan menyalurkan tenaga kita ke haluan baharu. Pelaburan demi kesenian Malaysia adalah pelaburan demi jiwa kita. Seni mewakili sejarah terindah dan masa depan kita. Cendana mendorong kita ke hadapan. Dan dari sini, kita bangkit.
Hi and welcome everyone to the Open Arts classes brought to you by Cendana. My name is Yana Rizal and I'll be your moderator for this session. The Open Arts classes are a series of art classes under Cendana's Arts in the City program. The Open Arts classes, or OAC, are held from 29th October to 21st November 2021. The OAC features the country's renowned arts practitioners to share with you their insights and expertise in their field. If you'd like to find out more about the OAC and Arts in the City, do visit www.bskl.com.my/AITC. Now, before we begin, let's go through some house rules for the session. To ensure clear audio quality, we will mute your audio and video throughout the session except during the question and answer session. We will also be recording this session. Please share your question in the chat box and the moderator will put forward your question during the Q&A session. Please respect all participants throughout the session and please introduce yourself in the chat box. We'd also appreciate your support in filling out our survey feedback form. Link will be given in the chat box. Please avoid using crass language, unconstructive feedback, and or leaving spam comments. Failure to respect the session, the organizer reserves the right to exclude the attendee from further participating in this session. So our session today is titled Navigating the Contemporary Art Scene with Ling, where we'll learn a little bit about the Malaysian art scene, how to begin as an art collector, how to identify a real artist, evaluating art, artistic revolution, art investment, and also lastly about art etiquette. So a brief introduction of our speaker today. Ling is the eponymous founder of the Ling Gallery, established in 2002, with the ambition to nurture the development of Malaysia's contemporary art scene. In 2011, the gallery has expanded with its second space, the Ling Contemporari, dedicated to showcase special projects and more experimental art forms. With its 2 art spaces in Kuala Lumpur, the Ling Gallery has established itself as the largest commercial gallery in Malaysia. So let's give a warm welcome to Ms. Ling. How are you today, Ling?
I'm very well, Yana. Thank you so much for having me.
Good, you're looking good. Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, a very good afternoon to everybody who's joining us today. Thank you all for signing up to join me for today's masterclass.
Yeah.
The recording is it's quite long actually.
Yeah.
And it's going to be about an hour and a bit.
Yeah, I think there's going to be like quite some substantial stuff that we're going to be looking at later on in the video as well. So it's great to see you in high spirits. Just a little bit of a thing before we start. So I would like to take a photo with everybody in the session before we start. So can I please just have everyone who's here to turn on their cameras. We'll have a countdown to 3. Everybody just please look at the camera and smile. If you'd like to do your own poses, you're free to do so. So we'll do 3 takes, all right? So we'll do the first one then. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then last one, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's begin. Over to you, Ling, please.
Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to say that today's recording is an hour long, even after our edits. So you can imagine how much we actually recorded. So I do hope you will have the stamina to stay on right to the end. From filming today's class, it has provided me actually with an insight into how it might have been done better, I think, I hope you will bear with me in watching this video because it is our first attempt. But nonetheless, as there's a lot of ground to cover on this very broad topic, on how to look at art and collect art. So I've tried to narrow my parameters down to by addressing an imagined audience who are interested in starting to look at and collect art. And this is against the backdrop of the Malaysian art scene and my years of being a part of it. Okay, so essentially this is very much an introduction. I've tried to be as objective as possible in my delivery, but invariably, when I refer to examples of artists, I can only reference those with whom I have worked with over the years. And if you have any questions or need any clarification about some things I've said or are uncertain about certain areas, please feel welcome to submit your questions, and time permitting, I would love to try to answer them for you. And if you are interested in learning more about Contemporary Art Malaysia, please do follow us on Wailing Gallery on Instagram, or we also actually, the gallery has a podcast on Spotify called the Wailing Gallery Podcast. So if you're interested in learning more about the contemporary art scene or listening to artists talk about their practice, please do join us. And so thank you, Chandana, for inviting me to be a part of this initiative. It's been a great honor, and enjoy today's session. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ling, and welcome to my open art class with Chandana. Thank you for joining me today. It is such a great pleasure to be here. Today's talk is entitled Navigating the Contemporary Art Scene. And today I will be sharing with you my own personal experiences in having navigated the scene myself over the last 20 years. It has been a journey. And really sort of exciting and interesting one, not without its ups and downs, but I'm so happy to share all my experiences with you today. So today's class is primarily for those who are interested in starting to look at collecting art. It is for those who are curious about how to navigate the scene. Where do you start? What are the questions to ask? How do you identify a genuine artist? How do you know if an artwork is a good work of art? How do you know if this artist is collectible? I mean, there's so many questions, that can be asked. But I will try to put everything into something a little bit more organized or concise, so that there are tools that you can arm yourself with when you start on your journey in your search for art. So over the last 2 decades, I have observed and been a witness to what is happening in the global art scene, not just the local art scene. And it has been a really interesting period, because for the first time, I think, in the history of art, I dare say, Asian art is taking center stage, right? So when I say that, what I mean is, when you think about, in 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, it was impossible to really find any Asian artist being given a platform in any major Western art museum. So over the last 20 years, I've seen Ai Weiwei show it, the Tate Modern in the UK, the Guggenheim in New York gave a 30-year retrospective to contemporary Chinese art and how that evolved, it's cool, or you can think about, or even Yaya Kusama showing in Singapore at the National Gallery of Singapore. So, these are just a few simple examples of what I mean, So, and also, even in the region, we've seen sort of a proliferation of private galleries private galleries that have been set up to provide platforms for Asian artists to share sort of their, issues that are of urgency to them, that they need a platform on which to present them. And so, you have wonderful museums like the Youth Museum, which is in Shanghai, but is set up by an Indonesian collector. Or you have the Allen Center of Contemporary Art in Beijing, which has also provided a fantastic platform, an amazing platform for Asian artists to present solo projects or important installations that talk about pertinent issues. Or you are closer to home, we've got the Macan Museum, which has been set up in Jakarta, which provides a platform for Asian artists. Okay, so, and I think locally in Malaysia we have Ilham. So thankfully we also have some private museums that are dedicated to the promotion of Southeast Asian contemporary arts. Major art fairs have also started sprouting up in Asia. I mean, we're talking about Art Basel, for example, setting up their first outpost in Hong Kong in 2013, and as a result of that, attracted all the mega galleries to Hong Kong. We're talking Gagosian, David Zwirner, all these really major mega galleries started opening outposts in Hong Kong. From my observation of art history and the way art has developed, or if you looked at the centers, major centers of art over documented art history, if you think about where art was centered prior to the 20th century, it was all in Europe. A lot of it was centered in Europe. You see a lot of the major masterpieces in museums when you go to Europe. It is evident to me that the 21st century is the century for Asian art. I mean, and if you look backwards at history, you will see that there were different centers for art in the 19th century and the 20th century. So 21st century is a very exciting time. And, I always say this, and I say it a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think there is some truth to it. If there is a time that an Asian artist could choose to be an artist, and I'm talking about artists who are critically important, artists who are making important statements in their work about issues which are relevant to their time, you couldn't have chosen a better time to be an artist. This class could also be applicable to artists who might be interested in understanding how we curate our art programs at the gallery, and also how we go about identifying the artists that we work with. This class is by no means exhaustive. I will be sharing with you my own personal experiences and my own opinion about how to go about looking at art. So, you have to take it from me at face value. And at the end of the class, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, if you need clarity about anything at all. I will be breaking up today's class into 3 modules. The first module will be how to identify an artist. This section will cover, the qualities to look for in a true artist. How do you separate the men from the boys, essentially? And it will give you a few examples of artists. It will also touch on why artistic evolution is important. And in this particular section, I will be referencing artists that I work with, simply because I have access to their works and they have given me approval to sort of use their works in this class. The second module, will actually touch on why galleries are important and what is the relevance of gallery representation in an art scene. How do galleries promote, market artists, and it will also give you tell you the questions that you should ask a gallery when you go in to visit, so that they give you context about the artists that you want to collect. So welcome to the first module of my class. This section really covers how one goes about beginning to collect, or how to identify an artist to collect from a very personal perspective. When Johan and I started collecting many years ago, I won't say how many years, we used to just go visit galleries and just look around, and then we we knew that we kind of wanted to look at Malaysian art, so we kind of familiarized ourselves by going to the galleries and speaking to the people there, and I recall that we saw a Khalil Ibrahim at that time, and that we really, really loved. But at the time, we didn't have the funds to outlay such a lot of money on a single artwork. So the gallery was very, very kind, and she offered to let us have the painting over 3 installments, and we very, very happily carried the work back home, and we enjoyed it for many years to come, and it was our first purchase, and so it was really quite an important work for us. So I think everybody will always remember the first work of art they collected. I mean, obviously, we've gone on to collect many other artists' works, and obviously the way we have started collecting has actually evolved as well. I mean, with the way we look at art, the way we've changed, the way we've evolved, the way we've developed, we've also sort of trained our eye to see things quite differently to when we first started. And I mean, invariably that's going to happen to all collectors. You will start with something, and then you will develop and you will grow. The more you look, the more you train your eye. I truly believe in that, you know. So today's section, there's so many different artists making so many different types of work, you know, and who are the galleries to talk to? Where do you go, you know? And obviously there's so many different generations of artists working in Malaysia. I mean, if I'm talking about Malaysian art, you're looking at the modern masters, artists who are probably born in the 50s and 60s, and then those are the sort of the contemporary masters for today, and then the emerging group of artists, which are probably born from the 1990s onwards, right? So you've got quite a nice group of artists to look at, and today I will be focusing on mostly living artists. That means contemporary artists. So you want to start collecting. How do you equip yourself before you start? I think there are a few points that you should really be taking note of, and that is sort of read up. Go on the internet, read up, Google, find out more about the Malaysian art scene. Attend talks like these. See the kind of art that you might like. Identify the artists whose works resonate with you. I mean, visually initially. If you have an opportunity, visit art fairs. There are a lot of art fairs in the region, very interesting art fairs in Singapore, even in Manila, in the Philippines, or even in Jakarta, Indonesia. There are any number of art fairs that you can visit in the region. And then there are also visit museums. Go to our National Art Gallery, go to the National Gallery of Singapore, visit private museums in Jakarta, Macan, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, wherever you go, even if it's beyond Asia, or go into when you travel to the West, visit the museums, go and look, see, train your eye. Visit biennales, triennales. What are these? Biennales and triennales, they are exhibitions that are highly curated, meaning the curators have a very stringent selection process. They invite critically acclaimed, interesting artists who are saying, making statements in their work which are relevant to our time, which are relevant to their lives, which are relevant to society. And they invite them to one's place, and they commission them to do installations or projects, and these are presented. And this is not a commercial show. It is a purely exhibition. Biennale or Triennale is purely an exhibition to educate, for people to expose, to be immersed in what contemporary art stands for today in the world. So there are any number of biennales or triennales that are happening around the world at any one time. Google, find out where they are, go. Of course, the ultimate biennale to visit is the Venice Art Biennale, and that will happen in 2022. So you have an opportunity to visit something like the Venice Art Biennale. It's a life-changing experience, and I can say that personally because when I visited maybe a decade ago for the first time, I was so moved by the experience, and I now make it a point to visit as many biennales or triennales that I can I can attend whenever if I'm in the right place at the right time. So another important point before you start going out to collect is to identify maybe the type of artists or the type of artworks that you want to collect. I mean, for example, like for me, I wanted to look at Malaysian artists. You and I want to look at Malaysian artists, but you might be interested in women artists or artists who are making political statements or emerging artists. I mean, there are any number of of genres or types of artists that you can look at. So I mean, if you can, try to identify, because then that will help you to set the perimeters within which you can start collecting. It will guide you in that collecting. I mean, sometimes, of course, it's not set in stone. You might find something that's outside of that perimeter and you love it so much you want to live with it and collect it. But yeah, generally it's good to have quite be focused on what you want. I can safely say that over the years that I've been in the art scene, I've worked with or encountered almost all of the artists working in Malaysia, from the modern masters through to the contemporaries and emerging artists as well. So these I've watched artists rise to great stardom. I've also watched as artists rose to great stardom and popularity and then collapsed just as quickly as they rose. These are the ones who started off genuinely with purity of heart to make art that mattered to them. But over time, they have lost their way and, completely sold out. And then they started to make art on tap. I mean, this does happen, okay? There are also those who have continued to persevere in their practice, who, despite maybe initially not having had much commercial success, like maybe people were not interested in their work, or they didn't make any headway commercially, in their output, but they continued to make work. I mean, they stayed on the straight and narrow, they persevered. I think that this is really important to note. And these are the artists who live for their art. Nothing is going to stop them from making art. And, they will, I've watched as artists have sort of said, you know what, I'm not going to, I'm going to work a 9-to-5 job. I'm going to wait on tables. I'm going to, teach so that I don't need to compromise on my practice, so that I can continue to make art that's true to me and real for me. So, today I want to talk about the genuine artist, the artist who's only out to please himself or herself. And they have slowly grown and matured and evolved, allowing for their art to develop with the ebb and flow of the foibles of their life and the life around them. So, artists, you have to look for particular qualities. Look, I always say, talent alone across any discipline is not enough. And you see people and they can make work, they paint beautifully, they can make amazing sculptures and all that. Or okay, it could even be an actor. They could act well, they're good looking. But if they don't possess a good work ethic, okay, let's say they come late to shoots and that sort of thing, the artist may never go anywhere. No matter how talented you are, you need to have good grounding. Okay, so for artists, what do I look for? Integrity. Integrity is it's a big word, but it's also it's imperative for artists to possess this quality. Because, as I said earlier, if an artist is making the work for themselves and to please themselves, and that's really important, to please themselves, because the work is to feed their soul. It means something to them. So, you can never, it's something which is where if you say an artist has created a piece of work, and you were to say to them, I know there's only one piece like that. I love it so much. Can you make me another one just like it? Now, what should the answer be to that question? Would someone who has already put their heart and soul to something and it's already been done, would they be able to repeat that feeling in the same way, with the same commitment as they did with the first work? I doubt it very much. And sometimes when I've seen artists making, because they've been asked or they've been offered money to create something again, the magic is gone. You know, the second work is not incomparable, right? So I think when I talk about integrity, I mean an artist who has integrity will never sell themselves for money. That means they will say no. Even if someone were to come to them and offer them money, they will not take it just because they want to please a collector or a gallery. Okay? So that's the second quality that I believe firmly in, is commitment and stamina. So if an artist is really committed to their work, they are making work for themselves, that means they're excited about the work that they make. They're going to be committed to it, right? And they're going to be continue. I mean, you know, this journey as an artist, I remember one of a very senior artist, H.H. Lim, a Malaysian artist who lives in Rome. He said to me, you know, Wei Ling, artists, the gold miners, they need to go into a dark cave, you know, and they need to chip away to look for the gold. It's dark, you know, and the journey, they're all by themselves. You know, it's a difficult journey, because sometimes when, you know, they have questions, no one can answer those questions except themselves, because the questions are about their work, about where they want to take their work, about, you know, the search, the struggle in defining who they are, what they want to achieve in their work, you know. So this is key, you know. So they need to have stamina and commitment to it, because sometimes it is easy to say, oh, maybe I don't want to search so hard anymore. Maybe I don't want to look for the gold in the mine. Maybe I just want to go buy the gold for the gold shop. It's easier. Do you know what I'm saying? So commitment and stamina to making the journey into that mine, to search and to dig deep for the treasure. That is what artists are doing. And then my third quality that I look for is sincerity. You know, there has to be complete sincerity in why an artist is making, or wants to make the work that they're doing. You know, what are they? They're making art for the right reasons. You know, it is something that it is, as I said earlier, there are questions that they need to fulfill. There's a conviction in themselves, and they truly believe in what they're doing, and no one can sway them. Not me as a gallery, not the collector, no other artist can sway them, because there's that commitment, the conviction. Brings me to the question, and this is a question I ask everyone I meet, or anyone who's interested in art. You know, what do you think is the role of an artist in society today? Why are artists relevant today? Why are they important to our time? I mean, truly, you know. So today, an artist, a contemporary artist, their work needs to be rooted in very, very strong concepts. Strong concepts about who they are, because they are the witnesses to our time. They are the observers of our time. Through their work, through the projects, through the messages that they capture in their work, they should be defining the nuances of the time that we're living through. I mean, there are any number of ways of approaching this. I mean, of course, some artists are more direct, they're more socially, politically aware. They're making commentary about what's happening in the world around them. They're talking about pertinent issues about climate change. They are referencing or paralleling history with things that are happening today. And then there are also the artists who are sharing things about their own personal life. How they're feeling as human beings living in a time through which they're living, and in so doing, they capture. They should be capturing the essence of what is happening in their life through their work. So when you look for artists, look for these, look for what they're doing. What are they capturing? What are they observing? How is it relevant to our time? How is it relevant to them? You know, and also, are they exploring new things in their work? Are they trying out new techniques? Are they looking at materiality? Are they pushing the boundaries of medium? Are they moving from one medium to another? I mean, today, a painter doesn't need to be a painter their whole life. A sculptor doesn't need to be a sculptor their whole life. Artists are multidisciplinary. They can express, or they should be able to express, if they can, themselves through different channels, you know, like we know, I mean, artists are making paintings. I know artists who are also performers. At the same time, they're exploring the digital realm. And then, you know, as long as it's able to remain true to what they're trying to say, the fundamental messaging in their work remains there, and they're able to translate it, and they're taking risks, that is important. So I say risk. So why should you look for artists who are willing to take risks in the making of their work? And what do I mean by risk? I believe that artists are, that's why I said real artists are chosen. You don't choose. And when I say that, I say it because I've seen so many artists just, they just continue to make the work regardless. I mean, they might have a show, a sellout show, say the first year, and then 2 years or 3 years later they do another show and no one buys anything, like it's a total bomb, right? But because it's changed, maybe it's changed from the first show. So people say, oh, I like the old works better from the last show, I don't like this series so much anymore. But you know what? I think that shows the courage of that artist, the fact that they were willing to break out of something that they knew and to move into an area that they were unfamiliar with, and they were not making for a market. They were not making because they thought, oh, I sold out last time, I need to make again to sell. And I like to use an analogy of, okay, let's say you're going for a walk. Let's say we're going for a walk in a jungle or a forest. Okay, and then we're walking and it's kind of nice. It's pretty even, and then we get to a stream, and I'm like, okay, so hey, you gotta get your feet dirty. You might have to swim a little bit if you want to get across to the other side of this to continue our walk. It might not be a walk, it might become a trek, it might become a camp, you might have to stay overnight, I don't know. There are any number of things that can happen. Oh, and there might also be crocodiles in the river while you're swimming. Now, are you going to say, are you going to say, oh, no, I think I'm going to turn back now? Or you're going to go, okay, I'm going to take that risk and I'm going to swim and I'm going to get across to the other side. No matter what happens to me, I'm going to do it. And that's what I say artists should be doing. If they are really on a genuine journey that they want to look for something, they want to go look for that gold, they want to go look for that treasure, it's going to be hard. There might be a thunderstorm, there might be snakes, I don't know, but they're going to continue regardless of all of that. And that's where I see artists, that if you don't have pitfalls in your journey, you'll never be able to move forward. You won't be able to get to the other side. You won't be able to climb that mountain. So, earlier I spoke about, some artists who are sort of making art that is relevant to their time as an observer. And, and one of the artists that I've worked with, and I represent, we work together and I represent, is Anurendra Jagadeva. And, if you've not heard of Anurendra Jagadeva, please Google him and understand his work. I think he's a wonderful and an incredible artist who's got a very strong narrative in his work, and he's truly an artist who paints. He's a painter of Malaysia, Malaysian stories, our our histories, our, our concerns, the things that drive us, and Anu is a fantastic commentator on this. And I'm not going to go into all his work, but I will say that, just very recently, as an example, I'm going to reference an exhibition that he did called Scream Inside Your Heart. And it was, they were paintings that were made during the lockdown, because Anu is now emigrated to Melbourne, but he's still very much a Malaysian painter. So, looking at the work, which are popping up on the screen now, you will see that Anu used the mask quite a lot, because obviously, in the time through which we live, obviously we're using the mask to protect us against the pandemic. But also, there are any number of, he's also taken the mask and looked at, taken it to another level, like through a gas mask. And he used the gas mask in a lot of his works, because he was saying that, in commiserating with people in the art world, like performers or, artists, they were not able to perform during the pandemic. And so what happens to these people, in a time like this? Are they like suffocating, so they have to put on a gas mask, so there's a lot of symbolism in the work that he's making. So, sometimes, like earlier, I showed you some of Anu's works, it's, when you look at just a few pieces, or you look at one exhibition of an artist's oeuvre, it's like reading a book. Like, say there's a novel, and it's got 250 pages, and I say to you, just turn to chapter 9 and read that chapter, and then tell me what the book's about. You're gonna go like, how is that possible? I mean, I might know a few characters, I might understand a little bit about what's going on, but how would I do that? So I said, well, you really need to go to the beginning of the book to start from chapter 1 in order to understand what chapter 9 is about, isn't it? So this is the same with any artist. I think you really need to go to the very beginning of their book, so to speak. It means the beginning of their career, and to understand how they've evolved, how they've grown, and how they've arrived at where they're at today. Okay, so this is an important point to remember as well. Okay, so now earlier I also spoke about maybe an artwork, an artist perhaps searching for something. What does that mean? Sometimes, and I've noticed this, that artwork can be healing and it can be cathartic in the process of making, especially for the artist. And when they make with their heart and soul, or from when it's coming from a very emotional state, this really comes through in the work. And I'm going to refer to the work of Ling just to give you some context about what I mean by that. And I'm going to launch into a series that happened in mid-career for her. I mean, like midway into her career, maybe 10 or 15 years into her career, because I just want to show you an example of how this works. So if you look at the screen now, you will see a series of works that were made by Ling called By Hands. And prior to the Hands series, Ling's works had been very sort of colorful, and they had been very figurative. But with her, they were paintings of mother and child, about when she had given birth, about womanhood, and they were sisterhood. They were very happy works that reflected on her as a woman. And then you see By Hands, okay, and they feel heavy, they feel dark. Their hands are gnarly. They look almost frightening. They come out at you. But they're hands that are grasped in prayer. They're hands that are asking for help. They are hands that, she said, our hands make things, right? So that series, a lot of her collectors looked at it and said, wow, this is really strong, this is really heavy. And it wasn't at that time, it wasn't such a maybe such a popular series because people were used to her earlier work. But she persevered and she continued with that. And on a personal front, obviously, I spoke to her about the work. I mean, you know, when I asked her, you know, tell me about this work. She said, oh, you know, she told me after, you know, some sort of some time. She said, you know, my sister was really ill and we were going through a hard time, and then she passed away, my younger sister. So she really sort of encountered loss, you know, and there was a lot of prayer that was going on, and then she said her father was sick as well. So after the hand series, you know, I noticed that she started making landscapes. And so there was a whole series of landscapes that came after the hands. Maybe quite a few years, or maybe 3 years, I'd say, because it was a lull. It was a period that she was going through some things personally. And the series was called Interwoven Terrains. And they were quite incredible, because if you look at the painting that I'm showing you now, you know, you'll see that the horizon line is right at the top. It's just a little bit of sky, and the painting is in 2 panels. A lot of the works were diptychs. So my question to her was, why is the sky so small, like in these works? I mean, I can see that you're maybe coming out of the depression or the sad time, but why is the sky like that? And she said, you know, sometimes when you have no more hope, like, you know, sometimes things are so bad, you just kneel down on the ground and you're this big and you just look up at the sky and you just pray. You just pray for help. That, you know, you ask the divine, you ask your God to give you strength, to give you the help. And somehow that helped me, she said, you know. And then when, you know, in the paintings being 2 panels, she says, you know, when you encounter a hard time in your life, like, or you go through a very difficult period, and in her case, it was the fact that after her sister passed away, she nursed her father, who was very ill for many, many, many months, and she was going to the hospital and she was praying, and then he passed away as well. And she said, you know, you are forever scarred in your life, and your life is changed forever. So that line that separates the 2 paintings, that line is the scar, the imaginary scar that's left on the human being, on the human soul. But as a whole, you're still the same person, but the scars will always be there emotionally, right? So, I mean, I just wanted to share those 2 very different series with you, just to show you her evolution from one period of her life into another. And in her practice, it's very much tied to her life and her autobiography, and it's her life and what she's going through as a woman, as a person, as a Malaysian, and all the challenges she has encountered. And she has a fantastic quote, you know. She says, you know, it is really not in my paintings or in my life, I look at the depth of my life, not the length of it. So, you know, I mean, I've been talking a lot about sort of perhaps figurative work, or work that, you know, where you can relate to something in particular. But there's an artist called Melayari, whom I've also represented and worked with for, I think, 20 years almost. You know, and Hamidi is exceptional. He's an abstractionist, he's an abstract artist in Malaysia, and probably, I would say, probably at the forefront of his generation of abstractionists. And, you know, abstract art, I mean, people think, oh, it's so easy, you can just splash some paint on canvas and all of that, but it isn't. You know, abstraction takes years of practice and years of understanding materials, understanding how to work with different materials, how to experiment with materiality, with texture, with color, with light, you know, with movement. You know, abstraction is so many things, and it is also infused with the artist's philosophy about what they're trying to capture. It's you know, in Hamidi's case, he always told me, I'm trying to capture the intangible, something that you cannot capture. Like, for example, he says throwing a stone into the air and catching it, or waking up in the morning and taking a breath of fresh air and feeling that fresh air going into your system. How do you capture that? You know, these kind of intangible moments of happiness or great sadness, or a feeling of the divine. You know, there's a lot of the things that he talked to me about. So when Hamidi first came back to Malaysia, and I'm going to show you just a couple of works from different series here. You'll see how, you know, in the beginning, his works were very much, you can see he poured paint onto canvas. They looked almost, a lot of people said they looked embryonic. And then eventually how in the next series, from the very sort of embryonic paint drops on canvas, it evolved into very thick sloshes of silver metallic paint with drips. And you know, he said he tore paint, he solidified paint and he tore it across the canvas. And you know, if you look now at Hamidi's series, you know, it's flashing up on the scenes, on the screen, you'll see how with each series, even though it's abstract art, with each series he's evolving, he's growing, he's pushing his material, he's pushing his practice into another space. So you know, there's this wonderful evolution and risk taking on his part, even though his whole the whole crux, or the whole his whole oeuvre has been abstraction, and he stayed true to that. So you know, these are just a few examples of what I mean when I talk about artists who are evolving, who are growing, who are changing, who are staying true to their practice. So you know, I've been talking a lot about what to look for, and I'm going to state here a few key points, and they're very relevant points to look out for, as in these are the red flags, okay? When you're looking to collect an artist, these are the red flags, okay? For example, number one, if you see that the artist is repeating, that means you see the same body of work, the same style, same color coming on, you know, year in, year out. Every exhibition you see is a similar or a variation on the same theme, and it's not growing. This is an alarm bell. You must ask why. Okay, this is an alarm bell. Repetition, I'm sorry, is not going to cut it. Okay. Number two, if an artist is willing to take on a commission, that means, you know, as I said earlier, say you like a work and it's already sold at the show, and you go to the artist and you say, hey, can you do me another one now? And they say, sure. You should question, why would the artist be willing to just take it on? I mean, come on. If it's only for money, if it's only for commercial reason, I'm sorry, again, is this artist worthwhile collecting? I mean, as a collector, let me ask you this. When you collect from a particular series, I mean, let's say that an artist is a solo exhibition, they've had 10 pieces in there for say, I'll just use 10 as a number. And all those works have eventually sold, the 10 pieces. And then 2 years later, they do another series. And again, that group of those works have evolved a little bit, and they've all sold. And anyway, let's fast forward 10 years after you have collected your work from this particular series, all right? Someone down the road says, oh, I really want a piece from, you know, a decade ago. Now, as a collector, if you have a work from 10 years prior, your work should be worth that much more, because the artist is not making those works anymore. They've evolved, they've grown, they've changed. So in the perfect world, the collector who would like to collect from this series would need to collect that work from a collector, because you have that work. However, if the said artist says, if a collector goes to them and says to them, can you make me a work that you made 10 years ago, like something similar? And the artist says, sure. Then I mean, as a collector, I think the value of your work is diminished because the artist has no integrity. Okay, so if an artist is willing to jump at any commission, please be aware. I'm not saying commissions are not, I mean, artists can never take commissions. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are exceptions to the rule. If, for example, a large corporation says to an artist, hey, can you make me a work that's, I don't know, 10 meters long, or by, 3 meters or whatever, or a 50-meter work, or something that the artist would never really ever be able to realize on their own because maybe they've never been given the opportunity or they've never thought about it, but they've been given that opportunity to say do a public work for a museum. As I said, if they're given an opportunity to try and maybe make something really monumental, or they're commissioned to make a project that they could never realize on their own, I get it, always for a biennale or a triennale, or, I mean, something where that artist is given and being allowed to try something that they've never been allowed, they've never had the opportunity to try. Go for it, go for it. But please, don't ask an artist to make you a work to sit over your sofa lah. Okay, I mean, that's really not cutting it. And if the artist is agreeable, question mark. All right, then again, what is the difference between serious artists and decorative artists, like decor? What is decor? Decorative art is art where I'm not saying serious art can't be visually attractive and beautiful, but it always comes with a good reason for being made. The artist has a philosophy, a strong ideology, and it's backed up with that. Okay? But if you just see, I don't know, a bowl of flowers or it's just a landscape for no particular reason, it's just visually attractive, it's just pretty, or it's just an abstract work with no real reason that's relevant to our time, I'm sorry, it's just decoration then, it's not art. Okay, I mean, there is a line to be drawn. And then the next point, obviously, I want to make is there should be uniformity of prices across the board for the artist's works. I mean, generally, when I talk about artists, I'm talking about artists who are represented solely by one gallery, so the prices are controlled. The artist and the gallery discusses the prices, so the prices are uniform. But if you come across, from what I gather, there are artists that are showing across quite a few platforms, with different galleries and all of that. So you need to ensure that there's uniformity of price. If your artist is showing in many, many places. I mean, if you like their work and you want to buy an artist who's showing in 3-4 places, please check their pricing, And also, I think what you need to be mindful of is, now this might sound a little bit controversial, but if an artist is willing to sort of say, hey, if you come and buy it from my studio, I'll charge you a lesser price, I think you better be careful, okay? I mean, that's just my advice. Because the prices should be uniform whether you buy it from their studio or whether you're buying it from the gallery. So, I've spoken a lot about red flags and what to look out for in an artist. However, I want to emphasize specific advice to artists in this particular section. So artists, please take note. Over and above everything else, please stay true and honest to yourself and your practice. Remain committed to it. Have confidence in yourself and have conviction in what you're doing. If your artwork speaks to you and it means something to you and you're getting a lot out of it, then this is what you should be focusing on. The minute making the artwork becomes mundane and a bit run-of-the-mill for you, you're not getting any more excitement out of it, you don't feel fulfilled from it, stop. Reconsider. Do not let anyone else, be it another artist, a collector, or a gallery, pressure you into doing anything or making any work that you don't feel comfortable with. find a good gallery, a good representative who will place your best interests above their own. These are the ones who will encourage you and nurture you, okay? Are the galleries interested in developing and nurturing the artists, or are they only interested in making sales? Do they encourage commissions, for example? I will share with you a story which I was told by a young artist many years ago. This artist had been making work for maybe 4 or 5 years, very committed to the practice, and he was working with a gallery, had a couple of successful solo presentations with the gallery, and he found that the gallery started asking him to repeat works that had already been sold. That means he was asked to make commissions on work that the gallery had already sold for the series that had passed. The artist felt very uncomfortable with this, but felt pressured. He didn't know how to stand up to the gallery. But after a while, he just sort of said, you know what, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. I'm selling my soul. I'm not staying true to myself because I don't want to be making this kind of work again. Repeat. Yes, it's easy for the gallery to make the sale, but the artist will have to sell their soul in so doing. At the end of the day, the evolution of the artist comes first. The artist and their development comes before the sale. So in addition to this, in terms of galleries supporting artists, if you are represented by a gallery, and if they have your best interests at heart, if say a really good group show, a group exhibition comes up at another gallery or in another space, could even be a commercial exhibition. I always say to the artists that I represent, if you speak to me, if we can discuss this together, if you have been invited to a very good group exhibition where it's been well curated, it's in a good space, you're showing with other artists who are well respected and who are very sort of genuine in their practice, why not do it? Please go ahead, participate, show with them. As a gallery, I will not hold you back because I think that group show is beneficial for your career. So a gallery should put the interests of their artists over and above their own. So, in this second section, I will be focusing on why artists need gallery representation. I know this is a subject that comes up a lot for debate amongst artists as well. If an artist is represented, they can concentrate on making their work, and they can let the gallery do their part. And their part involves things like archiving and documentation of the artists and their works, making sure they understand where the works are, they're properly documented and then there's also they understand the provenance, like who the works were sold to, where the works have gone. In the event, 20, 30 years down the road, a retrospective is to take place or a survey is to take place of that particular artist's life and work, that gallery who represents them would know where each and every one of those works has gone to. And so they can request on loan from the respective collectors. There's a good record of all of that, okay? Obviously, the gallery lends support and contributes to the development of the artist's career. There's a lot of discussion, consultation, and at the end of the day, it is really very much a relationship that's built between an artist and a gallery, and it's a trusting relationship. It's a relationship where it's mutually beneficial, and also it's a relationship that's grown and built up, and you trust each other. All right, and you both want the same things. Gallery representation also lends stability to an artist, so that in terms of funding, in terms of sales of work, the artist knows that the gallery is going to be putting their works in front of the right collectors, and they don't need to worry about that. They can focus on just making work that's important to them, right? And and they can concentrate on looking for the gold, so to speak, like going and struggling and searching. The galleries also help to control the pricing, so that there's prices across the board over time will appreciate a little bit, and so the gallery and the artist will be gallery will guide the artists on how to price the works, and when to increase the pricing, and so on and so forth, and they set that. I do feel that, although I just said earlier that you see the artist's works in different galleries and the prices should be the same, but I do feel that it really works against the artist when they are shown in multiple galleries, because, if you're shown across 3 places, which gallery is actually going to be looking after you? Help with doing the print material, making sure the curators come, the writers write about the work, they're catalogued, their books, their monographs that are published, they get funding for that. And I think most importantly, I think having gallery representation allows for the artists to have freedom to be creative, to just make the work that they want to make, and not really worry too much about anything else. They leave the rest of it to the gallery to handle, and they don't have the stress of dealing with the day-to-day of marketing themselves or trying to find buyers for their works. And obviously a gallery is continuously building a market, continuously putting the artist's works in front of the right people, be it curators or museum directors, or yeah, I think with gallery representation, the artists, as a collector, you can go to them and ask the gallery for more detailed information about the artist. They should have it all. Okay, and obviously as a gallery, even, for us, over the years, we've worked with and represented that the artists that we work with now, I can say safely, most of them have been with us for, if not 20 years, between 15 to 20 years, so it's been a long relationship, and I used to laugh and joke with them and say, what, we're going to grow old together, this is like a marathon, and we're going to be growing and running and be old, and it is happening. Like 20 years later, we're still, we're all getting older and we're still together. So it's been a really incredible journey for me as well, watching this. But so over the years, so in the second half of our second decade of our gallery's existence, we did a lot of international shows. We participated in quite a number of international art fairs, and we promoted Malaysian art on those platforms. We did Art Stage Singapore in 2011. That was a really major art fair for the region, and we took up a big booth, and I think we were one of two Malaysian galleries showing there. And people like, we had like Takashi Murakami was walking around that fair. Major Japanese artists. And then David LaChapelle gave a talk, during the fair. So you had all these incredible celebrities from the art world descending upon Singapore. And then you had, of course, all the mega galleries showing as well, on the same platform. So it was a really quite an experience for us as a gallery from Malaysia doing this for the first time. And again, with a lot of the important art fairs like Art Basel Hong Kong, for example, their selection process is so stringent. I remember we did try to submit our application in to several fairs, and every time we put our proposal in initially, it was rejected. They said, oh, sorry, this doesn't meet the criteria, and then you just move on, right? And I remember I spoke to a very senior gallerist, and he said to me, Art Basel, Art Basel, my goodness, you have money also, you cannot go in, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, okay. I didn't quite understand what he meant by that, right? So eventually when Art Basel Hong Kong was going to have their first fair in Hong Kong in 2013, in 2012, I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'd like to put in an application to try to see if we can show on that platform. And at that time, no Malaysian gallery had ever shown at any Art Basel in any incarnation of the Art Basel, be it in Hong Kong, Miami, be it in, I'm sorry, Hong Kong, but Miami or in Art Basel, Switzerland, none. Okay, so I thought, oh dear, if I will try, but you know, we'll see. So I sat down with Ivan Lam at the time and I spoke to him, and we came up with this. He came up with a project. He said, I want to show a vending machine as my proposal. I want to put in a vending machine as my proposal to Art Basel Hong Kong. So we sat down for a couple of weeks, and then we wrote the proposal, and then we sort of like, you know, sent it off and like did a prayer and hope for the best kind of thing. And it was, I have to say, when I received a letter from Art Basel Hong Kong saying that we had been accepted to partake in the fair with Ivan's project, I mean, you know, it was euphoric. You know, I was like shaking, and I called Ivan, I was virtually in tears. I was like, oh my God, we got in, you know. And we did that together. We went to Hong Kong, we presented, we were the only gallery from Malaysia. We were the first time showing a solo presentation by a Malaysian artist. And it was really well accepted, you know, because it was a Malaysian artist, and, you know, we were so proud to be on that platform. And then we were able to show Ivan in Hong Kong. And I mean, the Art Basel Fair is, again, on another level. You have the mega galleries from all around the world. You're talking about the top gallery from each country in the world being seen on that platform. And they're incredible installations in the encounters section, and we can see, if you look at the video I'm showing, I mean the photos I'm showing you now, I mean it is an experience and a half. If you ever have an opportunity to go and visit the Art Basel in Hong Kong, please go. It is an eye-opener. Okay, and obviously, you know, over the years we've also sort of, you know, the second exhibition we showed in Hong Kong was Choi Chun Wei. We got accepted in Art Basel again, the second year after they'd been formed, and we showed an installation by Choi Chun Wei, which was called The Human Landscapes. And you know, you can see from the pictures, it was an exhibition. It was a piece of work that was growing day by day at the fair, and the artist Choi Chun Wei was taking information from the visitors to the fair, to personal information like their name, the size of their fingernail, the size of their feet, their height, their weight, whatever, anything was personal to them. And he was cutting it and getting them to write it in their personal handwriting and pasting it onto this big installation in the fair. And it was very interactive, and it was very, very well received. And then obviously the third time we showed at Art Basel, we showed Anurendra Jagadeva's inside yesterday in a padded room. And if you look at the pictures, you know, it will show you how phenomenal that work was. And obviously that from that fair, you know, a lot of interest came from curators, international curators from around the world. And then because of that, Anu's installation was then shown, well, he was invited to show in Taiwan at the Gwangju Biennale. And you know, so when you show, what I'm trying to say is that when galleries take artists to important platforms, you know, you expose them not just to collectors, but you also expose them to curators, to museums, you know, and as a result of I think a lot of the fairs that we've done, or a lot of the presentations that we've done, a lot of our artists have gained recognition or have been noticed by institutions, not just, you know, and public institutions. Like Singapore Museum has collected quite a lot of the artists' works, you know. And then, you know, obviously we also did, I mean, our artists were invited to participate in various biennales. And then obviously we also helped to realize Malaysia's first pavilion at the Venice Art Biennale in 2019. And that was a momentous occasion, I mean, for Malaysia. I have a very strong philosophy about where we're coming from, and what we expect of our artists when we represent them, and they also share with us what they expect from us when in our representation of them. And I think it's really important for the artists and the gallery to grow together, and because the gallery in a lot of ways should act as a filter, in a sense, meaning the artists that are represented by any particular gallery the gallery must have a good reason for why they are representing that artist. So, when you go and talk to a gallery, talk to a gallerist, ask them, what's the philosophy behind why you work with these particular artists? Which ones are represented by you? Which ones are not represented by you, and why? Ask these questions, right? I think it's imperative because at the end of the day, the galleries must stand by their artists. They must have absolute conviction and faith in the people that they work with. Otherwise, why are they working with them? It can't just be a commercial. It can't be just based on commercial profit or whatever. It's got to be much more than that. So this section covers the questions that you should really arm yourself with before you go to a gallery. I'm going to share with you an experience that I had personally. So I was in Hong Kong, and Johan and I walked past a gallery in Wellington Road, and we sort of said, hey, that looks like quite an interesting painting. It was so we walked in and asked about the work, like who's the artist, like of course we didn't know the name of the artist, had never heard of him before, but visually the work was quite interesting. And then obviously, we just sort of asked, so what's the price? I mean, obviously just to gauge. And the gallery said, I think it was, the work must have been about, it wasn't small, it was maybe 5 feet by 5 feet, 150 by 150 cm. And the gallery said, it's 300,000 Hong Kong. I said, okay, fine. So that works out to what? Roughly 150,000 ringgit. So I said, okay, fine. Can I look at I asked immediately, can I look at the artist's CV, please? Because it will help me to gauge, right? Like, who's this artist? Where did they go to school? How many years have they been practicing? How many shows have they had? All of that. So the CV comes out in the filter. And then I looked at it, and it was like, the CV was like 3 lines long. It was like, the artist graduated last year, and they've done 1 show with this gallery. And the work in question was made in year of graduation. And I'm like, but that was like 2 years ago, right? And the gallery says, yeah, they just graduated 2 years ago. So I said, so this work is a graduation work? And they're like, yeah. So immediately I thought, well, I think for that price, I will really need to reconsider this and think about it, or not, right? So what I'm trying to say to you is that it's really important to ask to look at the CV of an artist if you're interested in their work. Just to understand, like what year were they born, simple things like where do they go to school, how many solo exhibitions have they had, how many group shows do they participate in a year, right? Like, I think the CV just gives you a gauge to understand how prolific the artist is. Like in Malaysia, are they represented by one gallery, or in the region, are they represented by, how many galleries are they represented by in the region? I think it's fine to be represented by one gallery per region, because maybe the galleries would collaborate with each other, but to be represented or be working with multiple galleries, I'm going to say it again, I know I'm repeating, is not encouraged. Truly, it doesn't work for the advantage of the artist. So another question to ask is, what are the main themes behind the artist practice? Like, try to understand from the gallery, what is the philosophy, where they're coming from, why have they made the work in the way that they have, why are they making the work with this material, where are they at in their careers? Ask this question, okay? And then also ask about whether the artist has participated in any major art fairs. Have they been invited to partake in major group exhibitions internationally, or have they been invited to partake in biennales or triennales? Have they won any art competitions? These are all, you can ask this. You probably see it in the CV, but ask as well. And then if they have, ask to see the work. Ask. The gallery, if they're representing their artist well, they should have all this information at their fingertips. So also, another important point, has the artist's work gone into any important museum collections or important private collections or corporate collections? This is important to ask because it shows you that, important players are interested in their work, right? Also, important question, how is this work, artist's work, relevant to the context of their time? How is it reflective of their time? How are they observers of their time? Again, this goes back to the role of an artist. What is the role of an artist? So ask, how relevant is this piece to our time? How is it reflective? How is it reflective on the artist's life? Is there sincerity there? Is there honesty in the way that it's been made? Okay. Also, okay, then price. Ask about the price. How the price is arrived at. Is it a standard price? Is it a price that goes up over time? These are questions the gallery should be able to answer for you, right? And then I suppose you could also ask, has the artist gone into auction? What is their secondary market price? You can ask all these questions, okay? And then the last question is really not meant for the gallery, but it's meant for you. And that is, you know, how do you feel about it? Do you like it? Can you live with it? You know, because at the end of the day, in the collecting, yes, I've given you all these pointers and tips, but at the end of the day, you have to love it and you have to live with it. And if you can find a work that covers these bases, that means it appeals to you visually and emotionally, and yet it is conceptually and sound and has substance. You can't go wrong then. So we've come now to the end of the class. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and you would find, you know, the points, the tips that I provided you with informative for your art collecting. It is by no means exhaustive. You know, there's a lot more ground to cover, but you know, we've just got enough time for what I've told you today. If you have a chance, you know, please come by and speak to me personally. If you have any more questions, write in. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I'm going to leave you with this note. You know, as a collector, you know, enjoy the process of collecting. See lots of things. Train your eye. You know, go out there and yeah, develop the way you look at work, and respect artists, respect their process, their journeys, and be patient, because at the end of the day, half the joy in collecting is in following the career of an artist and to see how they develop and they grow over time, right? And you know, as I said earlier, artists are in the gold mine. They're deep in there. The real ones are deep in there, struggling and looking for the gold. So be patient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wei Ling, for that very insightful sharing. I think we all learned really a lot from that video as well. There's actually quite a bit of questions in the chat box as well. So you know, I think people are just, you know, very curious in this space. Yeah. So let's start the Q&A session. So for this Q&A, I'll be reading out the questions that were already raised in the chat box, and we'll go by selected questions as well. So during the session, if there are any further questions from the audience, do feel free to drop them in the chat box. If we have time, we'll address them as well. All right. So let's go with the first one. So the first one is actually more of a comment rather than anything else. There is this comes from Rahman Yi, sorry. So Rahman Yi actually made a comment during your video that he said that Warhol is famous for repeating art, number one. And secondly, he's also asking whether you think Jeff Koons is a decorative artist. Yeah, pretty spicy. Let's start with that.
Okay, sure. Okay, so very valid question. Okay, maybe I should have been more, I should have been clearer in my explanation. When I talk about repetition, I was referring mainly to artists in series, not photographers who obviously work in series, or or artists who are making digital work, or printmakers, that sort of thing, where they work in series anyway. Okay. To answer your question specifically about Andy Warhol and editions, yes, Andy Warhol did make editions, and I'm not saying artists cannot repeat themselves, but they must have good reason to be doing it. In the case of Andy Warhol, he was working at a time a turning point in America where there was huge industrialization. There was a lot of factories that were churning out a lot of food, like case in point, Campbell's soup, and so on and so forth. And he was really making a commentary about America at that time, and in so doing, he was, I think he had a factory asking people, he wasn't making the work anymore. He had come up with concepts and the ideas behind it. And he was at the forefront of his time because he was making a real commentary about what was going on in America at that time, about commercialism and so on and so forth. So in that instance, if an artist wants to repeat and they can defend their work with the reason and the concepts behind why they're repeating, do it. Commentary is good. Talk about the times, reflect on it. In the case of Jeff Koons also is a very conceptual artist. Yes, you can regard his work as kitsch. Yes, he puts some really kitschy things out there. He looks like, my God, that looks like a bunch of artificial flowers. But hey, what is the reasoning behind why he's made that bunch of artificial flowers look like that? I mean, I saw the Versailles when Jeff Koons was invited to show his work in Versailles. There was a lot of people were just sort of against what he was doing because his work clashed so much with all that sort of the work that was in the very classical work that was in Versailles versus his very kitsch, loud pop work. So Jeff Koons is not a decorative artist, not by any stretch of the imagination. To be clear, when I talk about decorative art, I'm talking about just making a still life for the sake of making a still life, putting paint on canvas to make a still life, or to paint a cat, or to paint a lens. I mean, look, I'm not diminishing that, but I'm just saying that in terms of collecting art, I don't, unless there's very strong reasoning and philosophy behind why you are making still life today, it falls into decoration. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I think that answers it. Basically, it's, I guess it's just kind of difficult to make that distinction sometimes, right? Maybe, over time you get to have a feel of what exactly is, something that is genuine rather than, something that perhaps is like a bit more impermanent. But even then, so, there might be some reasons behind that as well. So the next question comes from Adam Effendi. So he's asking about price uniformity because you actually mentioned as well that price uniformity is beneficial to the artist. So can you elaborate on that further? How exactly is that beneficial to the artist?
Absolutely. Okay, so what I'm saying is that, so if an artist is selling their works across different venues, all right, you cannot be pricing your work in Gallery A for, let's just say for case of argument, $2,000, and then Gallery B for $3,000. I mean, similar size, I'm talking size, let's just go on just sizing, okay? 2,500 in one place, 3,000 in another place, and then another place might be selling for $6,000. I mean, where is the confidence then for collectors? I mean, if someone is looking at your work and they see your pricing changing so much across different venues, there's no uniformity. Then how do people make a decision about how to collect? That is a question that comes up to me quite a bit from collectors saying, how come this artist is priced at this place and at this price and then another place at another price? And I said, well, the artist needs to control the pricing. If you want to show at different galleries, please make sure that all the prices are uniform. That is to your benefit. That's what I mean. I hope that answers your question.
Right. There is a follow-up question to that. So this just came in as well from Adam Fong. So he's asked, how do artists actually price their artwork? Is there a certain formula? And when you say about controlling the price of the art in different galleries, how much of that actually falls on the artist, and how much of that is actually under the gallery's purview, so to speak?
Okay, well, I think it's a one-on-one case. That's why I say, if an artist is represented by a gallery, you would discuss these things together. I came from a personal perspective. When I work with an artist, we work with artists to do exhibitions, we sit down and we discuss the pricing together, especially if it's a young artist and they're starting out. It's very important how they are positioned in terms of the prices. And then as the exhibitions continue over time, especially solo exhibitions, the prices of the works, sometimes they do go up. They should go up with time, right? I'm not saying exponentially, but I'm saying that over a course of 2 or 3 years, when with each solo exhibition, maybe the prices can go up between 10 to 15% with each show. But again, this is a discussion between the gallery and the artist.
Okay, great. In relation to that as well, there is a question by Isdin. So he has asked, why do we see similar artists being represented by different galleries? So I suppose this ties back to the question of like trying to control that, right? Because does it mean that as an artist, if you are, say, represented or you are shown in different galleries, right? Is there a primary gallery that they're usually attached to, and therefore, you know, they're just kind of like showing in other galleries as a by the by? How does that usually work?
Okay, all right. So I would say that I would imagine that if an artist is showing across many venues, they are trying to expand their market to try to sell. That would be the first thing that jumps to my mind. Okay. But obviously there could also be, I mean, that's what I'm saying, that it is beneficial to an artist if you're represented by one gallery, in the sense that they will jaga you, they will look after you, they will, you know, they will promote your work, they will, you know, show your work to collectors, they will encourage collectors to look at your work, even if they may not have seen it before, that sort of thing. But if artists are showing at 3, 4, 5 different places, then the question is, who's actually looking after you? Because, you know, why should I promote this artist when I have another artist whom I represent exclusively? Why would I promote you over them? So I think, to answer your question, why do artists show across different venues? It is their choice. Maybe they haven't found a gallery to work with. Maybe they're not comfortable. That is probably my answer to your question.
All right, cool. Next question from Desmond Tong. So he has 2 questions. The first one is, how do we encourage other galleries to support each other, number 1? And secondly, how do we encourage artists to support their peers as well?
Well, I think in terms of galleries, I mean, I will tell you here, the Malaysian art gallery scene is it's quite a fractured gallery scene, because I think simply because maybe the market is a very small market, and maybe again, many artists are working across so many different galleries. I think one of the ways that we can circumnavigate that issue is to have an art gallery association, which I think was mooted even through the Cendana space last year, but nothing has really come out of that. So to answer your question, maybe a gallery association might help that situation. In terms of artists and how they can help each other, I think that is a question that, you know, we've all been trying to address. And from a personal standpoint, one of the things that we found when speaking to young artists was that they didn't really have mentors on the local scene to sort of speak to in a very in a safe space, in a safe zone, you know, like. So as a gallery, what we started an incubator program with young artists last year when we started the inaugural one. And what happens is a group of young, 1 or 2 or 3 young artists are selected from the program, and they work with a more experienced or an artist from another who is older and more experienced, almost like a mentor. And then in that 6 months, they spend that time feeling that, you know, they can speak to the mentor about anything about the practice, how to push forward, the stumbling blocks they might have, whether they should be moving in a particular direction. They have a very open discussion with the more senior artists. Yeah. And so that relationship continues even post the program ending. So it creates sort of channels for discussion.
All right. Speaking about, say, for example, trying to get new artists to basically like rise up the ranks, right? And I find that this is, you know, very prevalent, especially I suppose in our parts of the world, in the Asian parts of the world, you know, this idea of the starving artist, like it's difficult to make a living out of art. You know, what would you say on this matter? Because I feel like this is actually something that, you know, niggles on a lot of people's minds, and especially for the young folks who are maybe like trying to explore the idea of like taking art up as, you know, a serious vocation, but at the same time, you know, they're just worried about putting food on the table. So what do you make of that?
Well, what I say to artists actually is that if you are a true artist, as in that you're authentic to making work or wanting to say something through your practice, it is imperative that you are not governed by trying to sell the work to live. Because invariably when that happens, the art is compromised. So the advice that I do give to young artists, especially artists who are just coming out, in fact, all artists across, even more established artists, it's important to get a job and get a 9-to-5 job. I mean, or even a part-time job, whether it's teaching or whether it is, just getting a salary. And it may not be a high salary, but it's a salary that would pay the bills initially. And because you see, in the beginning, it's very tough. It's not an easy journey. It's not an easy journey being an artist. And I've seen artists struggling in the beginning. They might start off on a very good footing, but if they are pressured, like they're pressured to have to put food on the table, pressured to, as you say, pay for the practical things, the rent, the electricity, and all of that. And then they start taking on commissions because they feel they need to put food on the table. They are selling, and I find that what happens is they are unhappy with what they're doing. They're unhappy with the output that they're making, and the art suffers because they're not being true to who they are. So to answer that question, if you want to if you're thinking of becoming an artist and taking on as a full-time vacation, it can't be full-time initially. You have to make sort of compromise by working so that your art does not compromise. It's not compromised. If that makes sense.
I think it does. Yeah, I think those are very good practical tips as well, because I guess sometimes people romanticize the idea about becoming an artist and so forth. So these kinds of considerations might be a little bit more tricky to navigate for people who may not be as experienced as what you've seen in the scene as well. All right. So another follow-up to that, this one is from Aina Mardia. So she is asked, if you do see a potential artist, how do you encourage them to go further? And how can a potential artist actually just gain confidence in their craft? And another follow-up to that as well is from Farina Zaki. Like, how should an artist personally approach a certain gallery for representation, or is that even an option really?
Okay, so quite a lot of things to
unpack,
approach that. So the first part was about how to encourage young artists, right, to develop.
Yeah.
Okay, so just from my own experience again, in talking to young artists, I think you have to focus on making a really good, making work that means something to you. When the work there's something in the work that is that you feel strongly about. I mean, look, any of us, if you do a good piece of work, whether it's a piece of writing or whether it's making a really, a great, completing a good project, we know exactly how much effort we put in. Like, I will say to you, how do you, I feel really good about this project because I know I put my heart and soul into it. And then other things I may not have worked so hard at, and I feel a bit uncomfortable with it or not so at ease. So the important thing is artists must be confident of the work that they're putting out. And when you're confident of a good body of work, that is when you can share it with galleries or and put it and share it. I mean, approach galleries and show them the body of work. Have a good reason why you're making it. You can defend it if they ask you questions. It has to be. You have to feel confident about what you're putting out there. If you're not confident about it, then don't go out there. Get to a point where you feel, okay, I'm ready. Don't rush it. And then go out and share and show your work. Not everyone's going to accept it, but it doesn't matter. You accept it. So usually it's good enough for you. So it doesn't matter what anyone else has to say about it. Okay? Yeah. And then what was the second part of the question?
That was about whether we can actually approach galleries for representation. How does that usually work?
Again, so if you have a strong body of work, I'm saying not just one or two pieces, I'm saying you've been working for a while, you've got a collection of work, and you've got a good philosophy behind it, you've got a reason why you're making it. I mean, I know some people have asked also, does artists have to explain themselves? I think you do to some extent. Even you might explain it to the person you want to share it, to show it to, but you may not want them to share the story with everyone else. But anyway, yes, you should show it once you're ready. Go and show a gallery and ask them. if they should represent you. Why not?
Great, great. Actually, yeah, I mean, there are a few questions with regards to that as well, right? Whether artists actually need to explain their artwork, and how do they go about doing that? Because, obviously when it comes to artists, right, they use art as their medium of expression. Maybe they're not the most articulate people on earth, trying to verbalize what exactly do they mean by their artwork, or maybe that is actually something that's private, and therefore, they're less willing to really define what it is. So how do you kind of bridge that gap, especially in marketing a certain artwork?
Today, Yana, more than anything else, and everyone here, contemporary art is not about the final product. It's not about what you see. It is about the research, about it's about how the artist is conceptualized, where they're coming from. It's very much about critical thinking and research and reading and understanding where they're coming from that places them. That's what makes contemporary art important today. So when you say that, okay, I've made something great, look at this work, but I've got nothing, I can't tell you what it's about and I can't articulate it. I have to say, I do struggle with that. I mean, I do struggle with that because, yeah, okay, unless you want to say that, okay, the whole ideology behind my practice is I don't want to say anything, and everything about my work is saying nothing. Defend why you don't want to articulate. Tell me why. Tell me why. It cannot just be, I don't know how to articulate. That's not enough.
So there ought to be, a certain idea behind it.
Definitely. So if your idea is, I don't want to articulate, I don't want to say anything, then your work must reflect that in its entirety. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure you come across this kind of situations pretty often enough, So yeah. All right. So the next one is actually a bit of a departure on, the kind of topics that we have been talking about right now. This is actually to do with curation. So the question comes from Jaya Satya. So Jaya has asked, does curating an art show come with experience, or are there any other special courses available for that, specifically for curation? Is it available in Kuala Lumpur, and what is the course duration?
Okay. Honestly, I don't really know if there's a curation course in Malaysia, sorry. There probably is. I think if you go online and you look, there might be courses for curators, but I do remember that Ilham did a workshop for curators maybe like a year or year before. They did a workshop with for young curators or writers who were interested in exploring that or developing that. I know the Japan Foundation in Malaysia did also do a curators workshop and course. So you could look at the Japan Foundation to see whether they still offer that, because I think they had they invited Mami Kataoka, who was formerly from the Mori Art Museum, to lead that. So it was a very interesting curating program. And of course, beyond Malaysia, I know Singapore, the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, and LaSalle, they do offer very comprehensive courses on curating. Yeah, we're just talking within the region. Hope that answers your question.
Great. Yeah, I think it does. So moving on to the next one, this is more to do with the idea of accessibility of art. So this comes from Hu Ting. She asked whether you feel that there is enough accessibility for art, especially in the public in Malaysia here, to know and appreciate art, number one, because usually art is, shown in galleries, for example, right? And, it is seen as, I suppose, in certain circles, it is perceived as something that is a bit more, within the elite circles, art is seen as a sort of a privilege, So what do you make of that? And if there isn't enough accessibility, what do you feel is the right way to go about making it more accessible to the public?
I think what Chandana is doing now, and I'm not trying to, not because Chandana is posting this, but I do think what Chandana is doing now is very beneficial to the art world as a whole, across all disciplines. Okay, please know that even though galleries seem very intimidating and scary and like, oh no, I can't go in there, I don't know anything, that is complete fallacy. Please know, and I'm going to say this on behalf of other galleries in Malaysia and across the world, we welcome visitors. We want more people to visit the galleries, so don't feel, please don't feel intimidated, don't feel that you can't, because it might seem that way, but it is not that, it doesn't mean that if you come into a gallery, you can't ask questions. It doesn't mean that you come into a gallery, you have to buy an artwork. It is not that at all. You must come in and you must, as I said, look at the art, enjoy it, ask questions, and you can leave. You don't have to do anything else, right? The idea that galleries open is to provide a platform for artists to be seen, for their messages to be shared, for their stories to be shared. This is really important. And I think in Malaysia, there are enough private galleries out there that you can go and visit. I would say that they would welcome you and not discourage you from visiting.
Great. Okay, in regards to that as well, another question from Isdin. So he did ask whether there are any key local art fairs that we should keep our pulse on, and have you seen it actually like pushing boundaries, the local art scene in Malaysia?
Are the art fairs pushing boundaries, or
yes, are the art fairs pushing boundaries, and what sort of art fairs should we keep our eyes on?
Okay. Right. Well, I think there's only one major art fair that has been taking place in Malaysia over the years, and that would be the Art Expo Malaysia, which has been taking place at Matre. Is that right, Matre? Over the last 10 years, maybe. And then there are obviously, I think that is a comprehensive look at not just Malaysian art, but art in the region, and it's art that sort of crosses everything from decorative art to serious art. I think I would leave it as that, at that. If you wanted to, and you could travel a little bit further, Singapore does offer up some very good curated exhibitions and art fairs. When I say that, I mean they have actually selected galleries to go into the art fairs. It's not sort of, from it's more curated, let's put it that way.
Okay. So this question actually comes from Ijaz. So he says, collectors are sometimes seen as gatekeepers of the art scene, determining what's worth purchasing and what's not. So what do you actually think of this? And do they actually play a positive role in fostering the arts, the art collectors themselves?
Personally, no, they shouldn't. Right? I mean, that's why I said collectors, okay, fine. If you are dependent on just someone to buy your art, and that's the be all and end all of your practice, then maybe then you would be dependent on collectors to buy your work, and they become the gatekeepers. You make them the gatekeepers. But no, I think the artists and their practice and what they're saying the artists should lead. The collectors have to follow in that sense. Do you know what I'm saying? And I said, even if, say, an artist moves out of a series that everyone loves, and the collectors don't want to buy the work from that series, it doesn't mean they don't continue moving in their practice. They have to keep moving. You have to keep growing. You cannot be dictated to by anybody except yourself, right? So I wouldn't give the power to any particular party, be it a gallery or collector, anyone else. No. The art collectors, do not see them as gatekeepers.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, in relation to that as well, what do you make of like the art market in Malaysia? Is there like a real market to buy and sell art in Malaysia? Because if we look at art as an investment, it may not seem very liquid. And what is kind of like the timeline that it takes in order for art to truly appreciate and value?
I think that's a very look. I don't think you can put your finger on any particular time frame. All right, in terms of secondary market, I think that if you collect an artist, as I said, who is making bodies of work over time and they're slowly evolving, then invariably, if people, the rarity of the work is there, because if they're changing, then what you have 10 years down the road is going to be quite different to what they were making 10 years prior. mean, just as a decade, just give me a decade as a time frame. And so by right, there should be a secondary market for works that have been made by this artist. In terms of a buying and selling scenario, of course, you have auction houses, I mean, in Malaysia, that take secondary market works and sell them. So yeah, you have you do have that outlet to sell the work if you so wish. Yeah,
Okay.
but I do think that at the end of the day, you have to love the work that you collect. I mean, it's really important to have an emotional connection to the piece. If you're buying it purely for investment, there's no guarantee with any investment, right? So if you love it and it's sitting in your wall and over time it's appreciating, bonus.
So it's really more about the artwork itself
I
rather
think
than.
that should come first. I mean, the investment potential is there, of course. I'm not saying that, there isn't, but I wouldn't put a figure on like, oh, it's going to go up this much in 5 years. It's going to go up this much in 10 years. I'm going to say that if you collect an artist who's sincere and genuine in their output and their practice, it will be an investment for you.
Good point. Good point. Right. Another question from Farina Zaki. She's asked, what is the future of self-taught artists in Malaysia from an established gallery's point of view?
Okay, so it's interesting. So I'm going to share a story with you with regard to that. So when I am presented with a work of art, like I see something for the first time, it is very much, and this is from a personal perspective as a gallery, it's the feeling. It's the energy that emits from the work first, before I actually look at the work. And, about 5-6 years ago, an artist from Ipoh, who's about 60 years old, and he's a businessman, he said to me, a friend came with him to the gallery and said, my friend's been making all this work, would you look at it? So I said, okay, sure. So he brought up, boxes full of A4 paper, and he'd been making these incredible ink drawings for about 30 years. Every night he would just make a drawing. He would do a drawing on ink or watercolor. And it was just something quite simple, but he had never been taught, but he just had this urge to make the work. And he never sold it. He never exhibited it. He just put it, after he made the work, he just took it and put it in a box and put it in the cupboard. So after like 25 years or something, he came to me and he showed me the work and I said, oh my gosh, this is, his work was genius. It was as if he had the ability to make work that was so naive and pure. There was a purity to it. There was nothing forced. Because I think he just had this ability that came from within. I'm going to make a statement here, which everyone not agree with, but I do believe that artists are chosen. I mean, over the years, artists are chosen. If you have it, you have it. That's it. And so you may not have a formal education necessarily, but you might have that magic that comes through in the making of the work. I mean, I know earlier I spoke about CVs and all of that. I mean, yes, in the case of this particular artist, he wasn't interested in actually exhibiting the work until many years later. I think he just showed me, and then I eventually did do an exhibition for him because the work just spoke volumes, right? And he obviously, even at the age of 60, he was emerging artist. You see what I'm saying? So it has to start somewhere. Whether you have an education or not, even whether your CV backs you up or not, you must start somewhere. So he started at base like a young artist, even though he's 16, but the work spoke volumes.
So there's definitely a potential there, for anybody who's interested and is already making the body of work.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next question. What do you actually make of artists who may be perceived as controversialists? People who are writing on hot issues. Sometimes some artists do like to do stunts, for example, right? Maybe for greater visibility or even like for commerciality. What do you make of that?
What I would say is, what's the trajectory? Where does it come from? I mean, if they weren't previously making anything of substance, and then suddenly they thought, oh, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and make a comment about this now, then I would really question, okay, is this where you're going now with this? Or is it merely sensationalism, or are you merely just trying to create a spectacle to promote yourself for this period? I mean, look, again, I think the genuine artists, if they're saying something in their work about or making commentary about, as you say, things that are hot topics and things, it has to come from somewhere. It's not just, oh, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and try and get my 5 minutes of fame. That's not enough, I feel. And you can see it actually in the way it's made. I mean, I can see it when it comes out that way, but it's not genuine.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, over time, possibly time is kind of like the test, whether this person is really genuine in the kind of artwork that they do. I think you also mentioned in your videos as well, right? This idea of integrity and so forth is very important to an artist. Yeah, so there is another question by Wesley Wong. So might be a bit controversial. So he says art auctions are largely speculative and syndicated. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think because auctions are they're an open market, anyone and everybody is able to participate. So whether it's opaque, is something that whoever is looking at it needs to be aware of. Whether it is opaque. So yes, and it could be used as a speculative platform for sure, to benefit particular parties. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. All right. So last question from Jason Yap. So he says, I'm super interested in the idea of creativity. Can you provide some examples of being creative as a gallerist when navigating the global market?
Examples of creativity, is it?
As a gallerist.
Well, when you talk about creativity, again, it is about, and I mentioned this earlier, it is about the intellectual capacity and the research and how a concept is realized. Today, everything, if you think about it, everything has been done. There's nothing new, nothing has not been done before. Everything has been done, if you're talking about making art. So artists need to step out beyond that. They need to start thinking critically. They have to start thinking about their space, how they fit into this world that we're living in. And it is in that, if they're able to take their the way they think into the next level, that is creativity today. Okay, I'm just going to end with a final example. I know someone had asked for NFT just now. I didn't really want to go into the NFT space. But if you look at what Damien Hirst has done with his NFT, right? As an artist, look, the NFT space is anyone's guess, right? It can go anywhere. No one really can grasp where it's going. And, so as an artist, what he did was, he posed a question back to the collector. So in the placing out of the NFT, of his NFTs, he's given, I think, the collectors a year to decide whether they're going to opt to collect a physical work, actual print of the work that they're buying, or they relinquish the digital print and they keep only the NFT. And in so doing, they throw the ball back to the collector or the audience to make that decision. Now, that is creative in the space of what we're facing with the NFT today. So it is not so much about him making something out of this world. It is about how he's thinking about it and how he's posing that question and how he's making everyone think about it.
Correct, like navigating the space that we're in currently.
Expanding the mind into questioning, where are we at? Where is this going? Yeah. What will it be?
is the value of the artwork in that fractional, or is it actually in, the physical artwork itself, which is,
Yes.
a very vast difference.
Correct.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right. I love that we ended on that note, things for us to think about, really. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for Q&A today. But if you do have further questions, which I know a lot of people do have more questions for you, you can always contact Wei Ling through Instagram at Wei Ling Gallery. Just before we end, Wei Ling, maybe some final thoughts from you for the audience as well?
Well, again, as I said earlier, it's not today's, I really enjoyed the session. Thank you for asking all these questions, because I think it just helped to maybe elaborate on things that I might have touched on during the talk. But obviously, this today's open class and even Q&A is by no means exhaustive. I keep saying that because there's so much to talk about, and there are a lot of, still so much ground to cover. And so, yeah, as Janet correctly said, I'm very happy to answer the further questions and to just expand the art scene and to encourage more people to come and look at art and to engage with it, and for artists to feel confident about making art in the right way.
All right. Thank you once again, Wei Ling, for all those great insights that we have on the art scene in Malaysia. So this unfortunately concludes our final session for Cendana's open arts classes. For me personally, and I speak on behalf of the team as well, it's been a pleasure with everyone to explore the different art forms that we're blessed with in Malaysia. And there are so many. So all these videos will be uploaded on Cendana. So do follow Cendana Malaysia on Facebook or Instagram for updates. We'll definitely announce it when it's up. And also don't forget, we'll be sharing the survey link in the chat box. So please do fill that out for us for our feedback. I do hope everyone has enjoyed themselves with these classes, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.